anyone who is following development in Africa would know that for some days now, there's been protests in Kenya. And the interesting thing about this protest is that it's championed by young people, to be precise, Gen Z. So the young people in Kenya have taken the responsibility upon themselves to hold their government accountable. What are they protesting against? President Ruto came into power, and ever since he came into power, I believe in 2022, he has implemented quite a number of tax reforms. He has increased taxing in different areas. So now the people are tired. Apparently, Kenya has been experiencing cost of living crisis. The prices of things have skyrocketed. A lot of businesses are unable to cope under the pressure, and quite a number of businesses have closed shop. Now, in this economic environment, President Ruto thought it was a good idea. President Ruto thought it was a good idea to increase taxes. So he implemented taxing, or at least they proposed taxing in bread, um, if I'm not mistaken, cancer treatment, quite a number of things. And people were like, this doesn't make any sense. So Gen Z, the young generation, have taken to the streets and they've been protesting. Unfortunately, per report, it has led to the death of a young person in Kenya, one person, and a lot of people are injured. Now, here's the thing. When President Ruto came into office, before now, Kenya has been under quite a number of debts. They are owing a lot of people, and they are trying to pay it off. So Ruto inherited debt. And according to him, one of the reasons why he's implementing, at least he's increasing taxes in different areas, is for the government to be able to raise money to pay off its debt and also to run, because government needs money to run. Quite all right, I understand where he's coming from. But from my own end, I'm looking at it like, why are you squeezing the people? I mentioned earlier when we started this segment that Kenya is undergoing serious cost of living crisis. The prices of things have skyrocketed, from fuel to food to basic things, even sanitary pads. So things are really expensive. Businesses are finding it hard to run. And in the middle of all this pain, you're squeezing them more. You know, how can you? What are you trying to squeeze out? The people are already dry. What are you trying to squeeze out? And with the level of spike in the prices of things, businesses are closing down. And if you know anything about, even if it's basic economics, you know that the economy of a country runs on the number of businesses that are thriving. So if you're in a situation where the businesses are closing up, that's a sign that something is wrong. And it's not in that kind of circumstance that you increase tax. Me, if President Ruto is looking for money to run the government and pay off the debt that Kenya is owing, which is an honorable thing. But please, we can start with the money he spends on travel. To the best of my knowledge, all these foreign trips that presidents and government officials take, they're not cheap. It runs into millions of dollars. We can start from there. Cut down the number of foreign trips you make. President Ruto, ever since he got into office, he's been all over the place. Quite all right. We can make an argument that he's trying to raise is trying to attract foreign direct investment into his country. I get it. But at that, when you understand the circumstances of things, you cannot be taking foreign trips that runs into millions of dollars, and you still want to take the pennies that are in the pockets of Kenyans. So this is what has led the people to the streets. And this protest going on in Kenya now, it reminds me of something that happened in Nigeria in 2020, the NSAS protests, and it even became a movement from there. Like also, it was young people in Nigeria. They took to the streets to demand an end to the SARS. It was like an offshoot of the police force, but they went rogue. So like the Nigerian youth were demanding that it should be ended. Now, from Nigeria to Kenya. Also, if you saw what happened in Senegal before the new president came into office, President Faye, one of the people, at least the large chunk of people who led those protests, when the at least the last president, that is it President Sal? Yes, Sal. So when he tried to hijack the government to stall elections, the people who protested were young people. So we've seen that in Senegal. We've also seen it in we've seen it in South Africa, but it wasn't really protests in South Africa. It was the large chunks of people who went to vote, even when the ANC was feeling comfortable. where they were and were not giving the people what the people had required. The large chunk of people who went to vote and they were decisive in that election were also young people. So if you look across Africa, you're noticing a trend, and that trend is young people are dissatisfied. Young people are dissatisfied. Last year at the Russia Africa Summit, the president of Burkina Faso, he's a young guy, he's in his 30s. I can't remember his exact age now, but he's in his 30s. He said something that was very striking. He said, how is it that African youths don't understand? How can it even be that we have all the minerals the world is running on? Everything the world needs is in Africa, and yet Africa is poor. It doesn't make any sense. So these are the kind of things that African youths are wondering, and these are the kind of things that are making them dissatisfied. You say, okay, the government is supposed to do this and this and this, and they travel, they see the way other countries are. They come home, and what is at home doesn't make any sense. Honestly, what is at home doesn't make any sense. So this is what the young people are seeing, and they're dissatisfied, and it makes me it's very inspiring because let me tell you why. It's signaling to me that the era of business as usual in Africa is over. That era is over. Right now, our leaders think they can continue the way they've been doing for decades, but a time will come, everything will snap. And what do I mean by to snap? A time will come where young people will say, enough, enough, enough. This thing cannot continue anymore. When we saw the elections that happened in Nigeria last year, a large chunk of people who went out to vote to remove the current, well, to remove the current government that was the government before this new one were young people. And what was their argument? They said Nigeria has not worked. Nigeria has not favored us. We want something different. So the more dissatisfaction is in the hearts of Africans across the continent, the more we are going to see things like this. Quite right. Right now, it may just seem like, oh, they're just protesting. But that dissatisfaction is going to lead to more decisive actions beyond hitting the streets to protest. I'm predicting that more African youth are going to get into office, if not for anything, to remove this. I feel like African leaders, in as much as we like to um, in as much as we like to say, well, they're puppets, blah, 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 they are doing the bidding of external players and all of that. But at the end of the day, they still have the buck stops with them. As much as we can say, or the external players are pulling the strings here and there, at the end of the day, the decision to be made is still with the leaders of Africa. So this behavior of not literally abdicating your duty. I mentioned in the last episode that we did. President Ruto President Ruto is everywhere. Russia Africa Summit. Okay, no, it wasn't at the Russia Africa Summit, but he was at the South Korea Africa Summit. He was at Italy Africa Summit. He was at US Africa Summit. He was at EU Africa Summit. All these things cost money. All these things cost money. So we can't be burning through funds like this. And instead of you to think of you tell the people to tighten their belts, but you refuse to tighten your own belt. It doesn't make any sense. So this is what the young people are seeing, and they're tired. Let's look at the number of people who are leaving Africa. In Nigeria, we're calling it Japa trend. The number of people who are relocating to other parts of the world where the countries are functioning. They're young people. You think that Kenya does not need its doctors and its nurses that are leaving the country? You think that Kenya doesn't need its entrepreneurs who are leaving the country for greener pastures? They are going to Dubai, they are going to London, to the United States. You think Kenya doesn't need those people? But they're leaving because they have looked and to them, this country is not working. It's not working. So what am I saying in essence? I'm saying something to African leaders. You need to realize that the era of doing business as usual is gone. We're in an era of awakened populace. And the more awakened the people are like this, the next thing you will see, they'll get into politics. That's what I usually advise African youths. Quite all right. But we are dissatisfied with the way things are going and the way things have gone for decades. Good. Take that anger and get into politics. You don't even need to run for office. You can begin by getting involved in party politics. So we've been told that when you come into when you vote your leaders in general election, that's how you can change your country. No, the real politics takes place in the party. I said all that to say African youths, as we are dissatisfied, we need to get into politics. Even if you don't run for office, for office, do party politics because that is where the real leaders are chosen. So I'm looking at what's going on in Kenya. I'm looking at what's going on in Nigeria. I'm looking at South Africa. I'm looking at Egypt. All across Africa, the young people are dissatisfied. If you're tired of the way things are going, good. If you're tired of the way things are running, good. If you're angry with the way your country is, good. That anger should be the fuel you use to change your country, but you will change it in politics. Politics is one of the ways to change this thing. Politics is one of the ways to change this thing. The second thing is, I'm telling African leaders, it's time to hey, the lackadaisical way we have behaved, our leaders have behaved for decades. In a few years, and I don't mean like 10, no, as little as 2 to 3 years, this thing will not continue. There's a movement taking place in Africa now that are going to flush out these leaders that don't perform. These leaders are just leaders in name, not in character, not in policies. They're just leaders in name. There's a movement that's going to flush these people out. And that's why I'm excited about Africa. Oh, I'm so excited. Look through history, not just in Africa, but history in general. Every time there has been mass dissatisfaction like it is, there has been change. So to the young people in Kenya, keep doing the good work. Protest peacefully, like you've already been doing. Protest peacefully. Keep doing the good work. And when the government makes the adjustments you're requiring, celebrate your victory. But don't look away from politics because that dissatisfaction in you, that anger in you, that craving more for your country in you, that is the fuel we are going to use to transform Kenya. And all across Africa, that is the fuel we are going to use to transform the continent.